I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and behind me is one of the most exciting new vehicle releases of 2023. It's the new BMW M3 Touring, one of BMW M's 50th anniversary presents to itself, alongside the M4 CSL, the 3.0 CSL, and the XM. The M3 Touring is a real watershed moment for BMW. It's the first time they've allowed customers to buy an M3 Touring. If you read the press materials for this car, it says that this is the first ever M3 Touring, but it isn't. There's a fully functional E46 M3 Touring that BMW's Skunk Works produced back in the day, but it was never released, which is a shame. But the G81 M3 Touring is a car that you can buy right now with your own money here in Australia and in a small number of markets around the world. And it is a car you should buy if what you're looking for is a rapid, supple, sporty, comfortable, refined family vehicle. Way more than any sports SUV on the market, the M3 Touring achieves highly across this whole range of activity. And in today's video, I'm going to take you through the list of things the M3 Touring does very well, the very short list of flaws that the M3 Touring has, and at the end, I'll give you my verdict on this car, which, spoiler alert, will effectively come down to how fast you should be running to a BMW dealership to order this fantastic station wagon. But before we get started, hit subscribe below. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. What I won't do in today's video is dwell on the polarizing front-end styling of the M3. It's either something that you can get around or something that will be a deal breaker for you. Now, I've been watching opinion online start to change around this very ostentatious aesthetic over the last 18 months or so, and it strikes me that more people have got on board with BMW's ideas around front-end styling than when it was first revealed to the public. For myself, I probably still prefer the more traditional aesthetic that you get on the 330i Touring or on the new 2 Series and M2. But if I bought this car, and I would have to strongly consider doing so based on just how good it is, I would just park front ways in every parking spot. But you can let me know down below in the comments what you think and if you could live with that front end. Now, one thing I also would do is specify the M3 Touring quite differently to this press vehicle that I'm sitting in today. This is a fully optioned M3 Touring, which does make it extremely expensive. We've got carbon ceramic brakes, which are important if you're going to track the car, but we also have the M Carbon Experience option, which gives you these seats, which I'll come back to in a sec, some carbon on the front and rear diffusers, on the side mirror caps, and all throughout the cabin, basically. I think you also get a track day thrown in as well. What I would do is I would specify my M3 Touring in one of the many beautiful gloss colors available. There's a deep red, there's a deep blue, there's Isle of Man green, which is the communications color for the M3, and they would all look absolutely terrific. Now, what you don't get is a carbon roof, which is unusual for an M car of this size, but it is because the M3 Touring gets its own roofline shared with the regular car, and it is a niche product in the M3 lineup. So I imagine BMW didn't want to develop a new carbon roof specifically for this car and this car only. But what you can do is you can have it painted body color, which I would probably consider doing as well. Now, inside, the M Carbon Experience gives you these insane front seats, and they do look incredibly impressive. They're covered in merino leather, but they're obviously a proper carbon bucket seat. We've got harness holes, and they hold you in incredibly well. So well that it's actually quite difficult to get into the car if you have a proper driving position that seats you relatively close to the steering wheel, as mine is set up here. So ergonomically, it's a bit of a nightmare to get in and out of the M3 Touring with this seat. So what I would do is just not get the Carbon Experience option pack for this car. You'll save yourself about 15 grand, which is a big chunk of change. And the standard seat, which is still incredibly supportive with tall adjustable bolsters, is actually a much more comfortable seat and a much easier seat to get in and out of. So I would be looking at that instead of this particular seat. That's my opinion. In front of you, lovely round steering wheel, a little bigger than the steering wheels you might find on some rivals, but you have gorgeous tricolor M stitching and immediate access to driver profiles for M modes 1 and 2, plus hard buttons for all your key shortcuts. So everything remains in the right place with the steering wheel. The infotainment package is BMW's latest one. We've got the curved display here, which is a beautiful piece of architecture in the car, and it is bright enough to outshine sun glare. You've got a 14.9-inch central touchscreen and a 12.3-inch driver's screen, and they both have a good level of customization. Plus the center one, you can actually still control through a traditional iDrive controller, which is great for bumpier roads in particular. But the climate controls, they have been relegated to the screen, which is an ergonomic frustration. There's no way of sugarcoating that. Now, interior quality is phenomenal. BMW are at a high point for build quality right now, and that extends to the M3 Touring, which is built in Germany. You also get extended merino leather up here on the doors and on the dash, so it feels suitably luxurious, and it should, because the price is high. Again, there's no way of getting around that. In terms of storage, you have a big center bin down here with wireless charging, more storage between the seats, it's a little shallow though, and big bottle holders in the doors. And a shout out to the standard fit Harman Kardon surround sound system. It's not the highest end stereo on the market, but it has a rich, warm tone, which has clearly been tuned well for the acoustic of this interior. But while the front seat of the M3 Touring is similar to indulgent sports cars like the M2, it's actually here in the back where you start pulling ahead in terms of practicality points, and you start being able to make a clear argument for buying an M3 Touring for family duties. It's a safe car, it's a comfortable car, and it's one that has a big back seat, as you can see. The wheelbase is reasonably long for the current generation 3 Series Touring, and of course that's shared by the M3, and it means that you've got really good legroom back here, certainly better than the M3 sedan. So with this seat in my driving position, you can see legroom's no issue, toe room's fine, and headroom is also excellent. Now, it is a 5-seater, but this middle seat is pretty compact. But if you treat the M3 Touring as a reasonably sized 4-seater that could seat 4 adults or 2 adults up front and 2 tall teenagers in the back, this vehicle becomes a fully practical proposition, especially because the back seats are actually 40-20-40 folding. So you can fold down this center seat and maybe put some skis there, because the M3 Touring has all-wheel drive. So you start to see this vehicle makes a real case for itself as an all-round daily driver that you can put the family into. And that's something that even the M3 sedan doesn't quite get to that level. And of course the M4 coupe and convertible have their own extensive compromises. If you want a current gen mid-size M car that barely puts a foot wrong and you can get over the price, the M3 Touring easily is the vehicle that makes the strongest case for itself. Now, backseat comfort is good. We have another climate zone back here with air vents and USB-C ports and more leather on the doors, so it does still feel very premium, and you get a flip down armrest with your cup holders as well. Plus, of course, you have Isofix and top tether for child seats. So even for that duty, the M3 Touring will get the job done. Now, you must be wondering when something is going to start going wrong for this vehicle. Perhaps it'll be the lack of the full-size spare, which we'll get to in a moment. But even when it comes to ride quality, your sleeping children back here won't be disturbed. But in just a few minutes, we'll take the car for a drive and talk more about that. By contrast to the polarizing front end, the rear end of the 3 Series Touring, I think most people will find it quite handsome. I think the light design is attractive. We have an M3 competition badge here, and again, the 50th anniversary of M badge, which is special to this car. But you'll also notice the pretty aggressive carbon diffuser with 4 pipes, each measuring 100 millimeters in diameter, and they are real. Plus, like other 3 Series Tourings and 5 Series Tourings, we have this elite feature here where the glass can open separately to the full door, which is a real time saver. We just have to chuck something small in, and then you've got a full power tailgate as well. Now, on paper, the 3 Series Touring and the M3 Touring only has a little bit more luggage room than the sedan, but that's because most car manufacturers only measure boot space to the window line. Now, you and I can obviously see that we've got a lot of space above the window line in this wagon. So for the once or twice a year when you do need to pack a lot of stuff for a family road trip or just going to the tip, you know that you'll be able to get a lot more into an M3 Touring than an M3 sedan, or of course an M4 coupe or convertible. So this vehicle is a very practical one if what you're looking for is a seriously sporty mid-sized car, but also one that can take on a bunch of stuff when you need it to. When it comes to running costs, the M3 Touring is a pretty heavy performance car, certainly not as heavy as SUV alternatives, so it will be lighter on the wallet than something like an X3M or an X5M. But if you do drive the M3 Touring to its potential, which is very high, you are going to need to budget for things like tyres and brakes. Now, this particular car is fitted with the carbon ceramic brake option, which is really expensive, and I don't think you need to go for it if you're not going to track the car. But even if you are planning to thrash it on back roads, pretty often you're going to need to be doing brakes more often than most. Now, in terms of servicing, there is an all-inclusive servicing plan which is priced on application, but if you want to, you can pay for that up front and just get that expense out of the way. The fuel economy is actually not so bad. On the highway, you'll get about 9 litres per 100 out of the M3 Touring. Pushing it, you're going to look at mid-teens. Again, it is, a good sight better than a sports SUV, but not as good as a smaller, lighter performance car like, I don't know, the 330i Touring. Of course, that is, again, much lower fuel consumption than you'd get from an equivalent SUV. The warranty is 5 years with unlimited kilometres. And lastly, when it comes to insurance, in the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer spent $3,264 to comprehensively insure a new BMW M3. Everybody's situation varies and your premium will vary based on things insurers take into account, like where you live and your driving history. For a car like the M3 Touring, you really need to bring it to a great driving road to make sense of it. And that's exactly what we've done. I'm on one of my favorite roads on the southeast portion of the Australian continent. And while it's not a German autobahn, what it is a technical, challenging, sinewy bit of road with a reasonably high speed limit, but it's still one where even with as much power and competence as the M3 Touring has, you're still needing to work relatively hard in order to get the best out of the car and the best out of the road. And that's exactly what I wanted. And what I found here is that out of all the G80 chassis vehicles, the M3 sedan, the M4 coupe and convertible, even the new M2, the M3 Touring has a very, very pleasant balance between kind of the ability to go maximum attack and really indulge in the high levels of adhesion in the tyres and in the chassis and the large amount of power and torque being produced by the S58 engine, but it combines that with this real sense of a long wheelbase. So it's like a long, loping, relatively comfortable vehicle, but also one that can achieve some pretty significant feats in terms of cornering and handling and body control, which are immense strengths of this vehicle, but not at the expense of comfort. And that balance is the most important message that I want you to take from this video. And it goes to this point that the M3 Touring is far better to drive than the BMW X3M or any BMW M SUV or any competing SUV in this price range. Sure, you might be able to go up to a very top-end Cayenne or a Bentayga or an Urus and be slightly better to drive than this wagon but have an SUV form factor. But the M3 Touring blows away an X3M or a GLC 63 in terms of its ability to provide incredibly sporting handling and superb body control and excellent refinement and ride comfort all in one package. That's what the wagon body style does, and that's, I think, actually what most people want out of a relatively practical and very sporty vehicle like this. You want it to be Jekyll and Hyde. You want to be able to daily and commute with this vehicle and then be able to do what I'm doing now on a phenomenal back road. So that's what the M3 Touring gets really right. Let's go to the mechanical package. So under the bonnet, we've got the latest iteration of the S58 3-litre twin turbocharged inline 6-cylinder petrol engine, and it produces 375 kilowatts of power and 650 newton meters of torque because the M3 Touring is only available as an M3 competition trim. So that means you're getting more power than a base M3 or M4, which have rear-wheel drive and 353 kilowatts. Here in the M3 Touring, because it's a competition, it's got more power, but it also has standard fit all-wheel drive, which is BMW's active xDrive system. But don't be afraid, because we've spent quite a lot of time scientifically determining whether or not all-wheel drive ruins the fun in the M3 Touring, and I can tell you it absolutely does not. I'll show you some footage here from our private test track where you can see that you can get plenty of angle on the car, and you don't even have to disengage the four-wheel drive system to do that, although that is an option. If you're happy to completely deactivate the stability control program, you can actually turn off any drive to the front axle and make the M3 Touring completely rear drive. But certainly on public roads, I don't think there'll really be the appetite there to turn off ESC. Because you've got a lot of weight and you've got a lot of power. And, you know, of course, when you combine those two things, there's the capability for things to go a little bit pear-shaped quite quickly. What you can do though is you can put the M3 Touring into M dynamic mode, or MDM, which slightly reduces the stability controls interference, but it also puts the four-wheel drive system into a mode called four-wheel drive sport, which I found is just perfect, and it's what I'm driving in right now. You are able to get plenty of throttle steer ability out of this car. You can adjust and nip your line through the loud pedal in the corners, but in an appropriate place, like a private track or a skid pad, you can get heaps of attitude from the back end of the car and indulge in a lot of power oversteer without having to completely deactivate ESC. Now, if you are on a track or a big private area and you do want to deactivate that stuff, the other thing you can do is engage with the M traction control system, which allows 10 stages of adjustment for the traction control, so you can, you know, pull some pretty big smoky burnouts in this thing at the cost of the massive tires, which are staggered 285 width at the back, 275 at the front. The rear wheel is a 20, the front wheel is a 19. Now, when you're not doing big smoky burnouts, the effect you get from these tires is just enough width in the tire to provide a really good contact patch, especially at the rear, where you're also getting the benefit of the standard fit M active rear differential, and you can really drive this car out of corners. When you're not trying to slide the thing, it gives you amazing tractability and traction out of corners, and you can really get a good line and set a really good pace on a cracking road in the M3 Touring as a result of that. But the tires aren't so wide that they starve you of the ability to dance with the car and have a bit of fun with the car. Then you go to the steering, and it's just lovely. BMW are starting to find their way again with steering after 10 years or so in the wilderness. The steering, of course, doesn't communicate as much as an old school rack, but you are getting a sense of the pitter-patter of the road surface. You're getting a good sense of the amount of grip that the front wheels have in this car. You're getting communication, and you know when you're starting to run out of grip. And that's another reason why the Michelins are a really good, successful, correct tire that BMW M have chosen to fit to this vehicle. And then there's the ride, which is in many ways the true masterstroke of the M3 Touring. This ride manages to be highly controlled and yet also very, very supple and comfortable all at once. So you do have adaptive dampers in this car, not air suspension, it's a steel spring with adaptive dampers. And what you're getting is, of course, a firm, disciplined ride. You definitely know what's happening on the road surface, but it is never crashy or uncomfortable. It is absolutely terrific. And if you test drive an M3 Touring and then you immediately test drive a BMW X3M, you are going to see the orders of magnitude of difference in the much, much better balance BMW has been able to strike between control and comfort and compliance in the M3 compared to the X3M. As a family hauler that can go very, very quickly and also devour back roads, the M3 Touring is way, 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 way superior to drive in every way. You must opt for this car over the X3 if you can possibly tolerate having a station wagon over an SUV. And of course, there's the engine. In some ways, it's a bit of an unsung hero of the M3 Touring because it's just so tractable and well adjusted for this car. When the S58 first came out in the X3M, it was a bit doughy and a bit laggy, and peak torque only comes in at almost 3,000 RPM, which is still the case with the M3 Touring. But the gearing's been revised, the transmission logic has been revised over the last couple of years, and the S58 is now just a superior package with the 8-speed ZF torque converter transmission, automatic transmission here in the car. The M3, a whole bunch of other BMWs have moved away from dual clutches to a torque converter, and that's just a win because, I mean, listen, here we go, listen. You know, it still snaps off an incredibly quick shift, but you're not getting the low speed refinement foibles. This car around town just drives like a 340i. It's a pussycat at low speed, which is just perfect. And then when you do want a fast blast, the The engine has heaps of give, heaps of pull, and the numbers speak for themselves. We performance tested the M3 Touring at our private facility. 0 to 100 came up in 3.44 seconds using the launch control program. The quarter mile was about 11.5 seconds at 192 kilometers per hour. And going the other direction, the braking, remembering this car is equipped with the carbon ceramics, was about 37.5 meters, which sounds middling, but our major test facility has a fairly gritty surface for braking, so sometimes the numbers can look a little bit weak. But if you do go for the carbon ceramics in this car, you actually improve the brakes to about the level of a M2 on its standard brake package, which is of course a much lighter car. And then there's the safety stuff, intuitive, well-tuned, stays out of your way, makes this car easy and not fatiguing to drive on the highway. About the only major dynamic complaint I could give you is that it's pretty noisy. There's a lot of tyre noise, which you can probably hear in this video. But when you do have an aggressive tyre, a big wide tyre, that's just gonna happen. I can live with it. The Harman Kardon can outpunch it, so I don't think it's a serious problem. So those are my opinions on the new 2023 BMW M3 Touring. I'm ready to call it. This vehicle is the best station wagon ever made. And of course, by extension, the best sports wagon, displacing even the likes of the Mercedes-Benz S204 C63 AMG with the naturally aspirated V8. The M3 Touring is one of the most capable and multi-talented vehicles that money can buy at any price. It is expensive, it is an indulgence, but if you're in the market for a rapid, supple, entertaining, non-hybrid, non-electric family car, you must consider the BMW M3 Touring, and it is the recipient of the coveted Chasing Cars Gold Star Award. That's my opinion, very keen to know yours, so please let me know down below this video in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.